So we are trying the exact same prompt for a Python game, but with the Phi-4 Reasoning Plus model, which of course is designed to, that's so weird. We are Phi. Okay, like, it's just really odd. All right. There have been a ton of new models coming out, especially in the last month from frontier labs like Llama 4, the Qwen 3 family of models, and now Microsoft is adding its name into that list because they have released a new series of Phi-4 models, I suppose you could say. This is a release of 3 new Phi-4 models, and they are all reasoning models. For this video, we are going to be taking a look at 2 of the 3 models here, as they are somewhat related, and those are the Phi-4 Reasoning and Phi-4 Reasoning Plus models. These are both 14 billion parameter models that are trained for reasoning, of course, as you may have guessed by the name. And I find it interesting that they mention the differentiating thing here, just based off this blog post, is that the Reasoning Plus builds upon the Phi-4 reasoning capabilities. It will use approximately 1.5 times more tokens than Phi-4 reasoning to deliver higher accuracy. So this seemingly essentially will just think longer and use up more tokens. And being that these are somewhat similar in terms of both being 14 billion parameter models and one just kind of reasoning longer than the other, we are going to be taking a look at both of these today, and we will run some of the same prompts across the 2 of them just to see what differences we notice, especially in terms of reasoning and things of that sort. I do obviously want to mention and make note of the Phi-4 mini reasoning that was released as well, and if we look at this right here, it is around a 4 billion parameter model, so definitely a mini reasoning model, and this may be something that I do a video on just solely by itself, as I think the smaller models are, at least personally, very interesting to me, so that deserves its own videos, I suppose, to make a long story short. I will say that based off of what I read here, these are seemingly very poised to answer mathematical and scientific questions. Perhaps not entirely compatible with the type of Steve's HTML PC repair testing I do or Python game development, but really I don't look so much at the benchmarks ever because I just like playing with the models and almost like learning their personalities, if you will. I know that may sound odd, but I suppose if you're watching this video, it probably makes a little more sense than to the average person it would. With that, I don't even know. I think I mentioned this. No, I didn't mention this. There are suggested sampling parameters right here in the model card on whichever one you are going to be running. So as we will try the Phi-4 reasoning first, we could scroll down here to actually get those sampling params, which you do want to have set correctly. Fortunately, here in LM Studio, these are correctly set for the model, and it is running entirely on the 2 3090 Ti GPUs I have. This system has an i7 12700 and 128 gigs of system RAM. The settings with which this are loaded in is the max context length here, and then everything else is pretty much default. It is set to offload everything onto the GPU. If we go here into my models, these are both Q8 quantizations that we will be testing. So the 14 billion parameter Phi-4 reasoning and Phi-4 reasoning plus. So I'm going to jump right in and just get started with a Python game development test. And we have our entire script right here. It's neon-colored graphics, a retro-futuristic background, and gameplay mechanics where the player controls a glowing sprite that dodges falling obstacles. Interesting. Okay, so we have another obstacle avoidance game. I've been seeing a few of these lately in the newer models that I've been testing. It seems like, again, put no weight onto what I'm about to say. This is just a subjective observation, but it seems like the older models would generate like space shooters, and then the newer models are just doing obstacle avoidance ones. Quite interesting. That was 45.5 tokens per second, generated 3,775 tokens. And we're basically just going to go ahead and copy paste this into a script. All right. Ooh, all right. So interesting. I like seeing that because it means it put some thought into this in terms of some obstacles fall at a higher rate of speed than others. So it did kind of put in some gameplay-esque elements. I can only move side to side. The score is lime green, which is definitely fitting of the style. I don't know how well it will show up on the actual screen recording here, but the, I suppose, player block of which I am moving left and right is slightly different colors to give a more of a synthwave style. Now I've noticed the blocks, okay, nope, I was going to say it seems they're getting faster as the game progresses. No, so let's try to lose and we'll see. all right, not necessarily a graceful exit, but the window just closes and the game closes if you lose. So I suppose that's reasonable. It did correctly do it. There were no errors, and it adhered to the stylistic depictions that I gave it. So overall, I don't know what to say, but acceptable. Now, seeing that we have so much extra context length here, the context is only 12.3% full currently after this initial generation. I think I'm just going to keep pressing this to make the game better and better, and we'll see if it either succeeds or fails. And I'm basically just asking it, okay, I need you to make this game really good, but also within the balance of what you're capable of generating. Basically just let it think and we'll see what it does. It's testing its plan mentally to produce code that does not have any errors, which good. I like to see that. Okay, so I love this. It was thinking about doing sound and then it was like, maybe not. I'll skip sound for now or simulate a beep with a console print. I love that. So the console would just print the word beep. I think from what I'm seeing there, I'll take it. It understands its limitations, I guess. So the biggest issue right here is that it did not generate the entire script within one kind of markdown code block. So that is a problem. I am going to ask it just to rectify that issue, and we'll see if it's actually capable of identifying and then fixing that. So this I'm actually interested in taking a look at its chain of thought here. I need to produce the answer with one markdown code block, a triple backtick code block. The instructions from Microsoft guidelines say that code should be formatted with triple backticks if using markdown formatting, so I'll do that. Let's produce an answer with a code block containing the entire script. It's rereading its previous answer. Well, it's now doing what I needed it to do, which is good. So assuming that it keeps this chain of thought and then basically just regurgitates everything it's doing right here, this will have been a successfully remedied issue. Now, this is interesting because I noticed, maybe not the current versions, but maybe like 6 to 12 months ago, ChatGPT was notorious for screwing this up, and it was really incredibly frustrating because you would tell it it's not formatted properly, you're doing everything in different blocks. It'd be like, oh, let me fix that, same thing. And eventually I would just kind of copy paste the whole thing into Claude and be like, could you please fix this disastrous formatting? And then it would. So probably somewhat of a tangent, but if this small local model is now doing this correctly and able to actually fix its own mistake there, then that is impressive to me personally, someone who's dealt with this for a long time and frustrated by this. And it is. So this is quite good. Neon Nights. All right. I'll take it. All right. It correctly did generate the script in one single tick box or whatever you want to call that. So we'll basically go ahead and see if it works. All right. So let's just go ahead and synthwave runner, press any key to start. So far, so good. Ah! Oh man. All right. I don't know. For some reason, like, this has enraged me. I honestly think it's this atrocious color palette. This is like an assault on the senses. Also, it's not doing anything. There was some button. I'm sorry. I've become like unrealistically enraged by this. Oh, okay. Let's just, okay. Let me see. Q or M was for main menu. Oh, press R to restart. M for, okay, I'd like to go to the menu. Oh, okay. All right, well, that just, yeah, all right, that sucked. So now we're just basically giving it a little feedback here. This is kind of interesting. It's falling back. This is a complaint. It says the color scheme and the code are not appealing, and it's complaining. So I am it. All right. The instructions say we need to provide helpful responses while ensuring clarity. This almost reads to me like the model wanting to be like, listen, like, but I will generate synthwave style Python game, and then the user said it is an assault on their senses, etc. I need to respond that this is subjective, but if you'd like modifications, please let me know. I must consider possible hate/hateful language. It includes negative sentiment about colors, but not hate speech. It's a complaint. All right. Well, that was, I mean, I almost felt bad being like a jerk, but I will say that it produced an interesting chain of thought here. All right. This video is going to be way too long, but I've been up for too long as well, so I'm kind of more loopy. All right. So we're going to be doing the Steve's PC repair. I will say initially, first things I noticed is that it just started generating the code far quicker than it did with the Python test. So it didn't really need to think too much about what it was going to do before it just started kind of thinking about the code it would generate. God, I feel bad for this thing. It seems so like it is absolutely forced to adhere to the guidelines, which I understand because it's a release from a large company who has an image to maintain and things like that. They can't have their model going like Microsoft Tay. But aside from that, it's just, I almost feel bad for it because look at how much it's kind of using here, just trying to figure out if this falls under the scope of what it needs to provide disclaimers for and things like that. So this is just, again, I understand why it's there, but I really notice here in these reasoning traces that it's still, I mean, I think this is a little extreme. All right, let's check out Phi-4 Reasoning's ability to make Steve's PC repair website. All right, so it's a 14 billion parameter reasoning model at a Q8 quant. If there are hover effects, all right, so again, not the best I've seen, not the worst I've seen. Still, I honestly think the GLM family of models have basically just destroyed this test because they did the best job at this by far. Honestly, right here, I feel that I'm doing a disservice to this model because they do mention in the script here talking about mathematical reasoning and PhD level science questions, neither of which are things that I have enough knowledge about to be asking these models live on camera. And again, I don't know how many folks that are going to be doing these sort of things will be going to a 14 billion parameter model to actually go ahead and ask those things. So I genuinely am at like a crossroads here, which doesn't normally happen when I'm just kind of vibe testing these models, but I'm frustrated because I think this model has a lot of potential, but I don't know that my testing is doing it at good service. So I basically just asked it, what are you good at? And again, I find here in the reasoning trace that like 50% of this is just it freaking out about what's okay and what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And that's not something I've seen to that degree on any other model, I don't think. Maybe some of IBM's models also have that because, again, the businesses they're coming from have things they need to adhere to. But I do think that this model, like, I genuinely feel bad for it because it's like stuck worrying about like, oh, can I do this? Can I do this without saying I can't do it? Like, all right, so I'm giving it a Unity script here saying, okay, the text-to-speech in this code isn't working. It is really quite a simple answer where basically when TTS is called down here, it's not properly calling the method because there's no period there and there should be. So it's not a difficult test. Nothing I've done locally, even much bigger models than this, have been able to actually figure this out. All right, so I am happy to see here that it didn't freak out about like adhering to its prompts and disclaimers and things like that. So maybe if there's a less ambiguous question given to it, it is more likely to not need to do those things. And again, this is part of the reason why I like testing these, because you get a little insight into how they work and things of that sort. So this is doing a lot of thinking here. And once this is done, regardless of how it does, I am going to change to the Reasoning Plus model here because I do believe this would be a good test of its increased reasoning capabilities, if you will. So we're basically going to go down and see how this does. Again, I don't expect it to figure this out as some larger models haven't, but it's still thinking here and we'll basically go ahead and just kind of see how it's doing. All right, so I will say from a debugging standpoint here, I think it did a really reasonable job, as a lot of other models that I've tested this with, I don't remember specifically off the top of my head, but they were larger than this model. They would just give more general suggestions, but the first suggestion this gave here is essentially about this method where it's not defined anywhere, which it isn't because that is an error in how it was actually typed in. It's missing the period. So really, the suggestions that this gave here, even if it didn't correctly identify and remedy the issue, would very likely nudge someone close enough to being able to figure it out, especially if they worked with the model. Now, essentially what I want to do, because this is definitely a problem where we'll be able to see more of its reasoning working, is go ahead and just kind of copy this message and change this. So we're going to eject this model. We are going to go ahead and now load in the Reasoning Plus model. I'm going to max out the context length. Everything else here is the same, so I want to keep that the same. However, before we do that, I am just going to verify that the sampling parameters for the Reasoning Plus model are the same. Okay, so the sampling parameters are exactly the same. My guess is they will be set to that by default already, so yes, they are. And basically then we can go ahead and just load in the new model. And once this model has completed loading in, again, now we will be testing the Phi-4 Reasoning Plus model on the same Unity C# script debugging test. It is using around the same amount of resource here, and really the difference here based off of the blog post is that this will use a lot more tokens for its reasoning or chain of thought, if you will. So with that, I'm just pasting in the exact same question right here, and we'll be able to take a look at the reasoning chain. All right, so this is very interesting. It identified the incorrect call right here more prominently than the non-reasoning model did. In addition to that, I mean, again, this actually did a fine job here, and it definitely gave you enough that you would be able to probably troubleshoot this if you just had this model here. So it's basically saying make a valid method and then replace that errored out problem here. So it did really identify where the error stemmed from. Now, again, it more prominently outlined it here, and I do want to just go ahead and compare the amount of tokens that were generated here with the Reasoning Plus model versus the ones that were generated with the reasoning model. So this was 42 tokens a second with 6,305 tokens generated. Now for the exact same prompt, but with the reasoning model, we can see right here that that's very interesting. This one generated 7,508 tokens, whereas the Reasoning Plus model generated 6,300. So that's interesting because, all right, well, let's see. So this one thought for 2 minutes and 42 seconds. This is the non-plus model. The plus model ended up thinking for 2 minutes and 19 seconds. They are really around the same speed. I mean, this is like a token per second faster for the plus model. So that's very interesting. So it didn't actually seem to think as much, but it did a better job getting the answer. I am not entirely sure what to make of this, but I do want to just basically like have shown it. So we are trying the exact same prompt for a Python game, but with the Phi-4 Reasoning Plus model, which of course is designed to, that's so weird. We are Phi. Okay, like, it's just really odd. All right. And it's now just going to go through and basically think about what it needs to do. Now, this is where I can definitely see a clear example of the Reasoning Plus model thinking a lot longer than just the reasoning model does, as it is still going here. This has been quite an in-depth reasoning chain of thought. I kind of just like backed off and have been letting it run, but just seeing what it's doing, this is really a lot more thinking than the non-plus model did, which is cool because in the code debugging test, it didn't really seem to think that much more, even though it arguably got a better result. So just kind of interesting to see, and we'll see if it happens. I want to see if this also neglects to actually generate the entire script within a markdown backtick format that can easily be copy paste in its entirety. But as we saw, the reasoning model was able to remedy that, so I would assume this one as well would be, even if it has to think a little more about what that entails. So interesting. Good Lord. Okay, so This is a full example of the 1.5 times more reasoning. This generated 13,693 tokens just for the question, please generate a retro synthwave style Python game. So that was an unbelievable amount of tokens generated. Now, if we just hop back into when we tested that in the non-plus model here, I think it was this one. It was the one when I yelled at it. Yeah, okay, because I was appalled by the color palette that it chose. So for the initial same prompt right here, this one generated 3,775 tokens. So the difference between the Phi-4 reasoning and the Phi-4 reasoning plus in the exact same prompt was about 10,000 more tokens to generate a synthwave style Python game with the plus model. Now, unfortunately, of course, it didn't properly put it in a markdown formatting thing, so I need to have that fixed. I am just going to copy paste the exact same prompt right here so that it can fix it in the same way that it's less apt to reason brother did. All right, let's go ahead and check. I am very excited about this one, I got to admit, because I see some things here that other models have not done in terms of the gameplay, so please work. All right. Oh, come on. All right, maybe I'll just... I'm going to ask it to fix this, because the thing I saw that was really awesome is that not only do you get to shoot at the enemies, but the enemies will shoot back at you, which I've not seen any model do before with this prompt. So I really want to get this working. I want to check real quick while this is generating if they mention anything in terms of larger potential context windows. They tell you to set the max number of tokens to 32K, but then they mention here that they have experimented with it to 64 and it still maintained coherence. The reason I bring that up is because I think the reasoning plus one is way better, but it definitely would tap out if you're doing more than just one-shot generations and things like that because of the context length limitations. So this model, I think, with a much higher context length would be absolutely stellar. Please work. Yes. All right. See, oh, I don't believe I got clipped there as I did. So this, all right, it looks simple, but the thing is, it's done something that no other model has done in this test, and that is that the enemies are actually shooting at me too. So this is, it's really cool. It seems like some of the game over logic may be messed up. I think if an enemy goes off the screen, the game ends. So I think that actually may be part of the gameplay logic where you need to just go ahead and get them all or the game is over. So, I mean, that makes it more complicated. I suppose from a game standpoint, this makes for a better game. This is actually score 7. This did a fantastic job here. It may not look super synthwave and things like that, but it did a quality and decent game. I honestly, again, maybe it's placebo, but I do have to wonder if the extended ability to think through things kind of helped it improve the actual like gameplay user experience here, because this is probably the most immersive in terms of like you would spend more time playing this than some of the other generations I've seen, and they shoot back, and even if one goes off the screen, you lose. So this, I mean, compare this to what the non-reasoning model made, and I mean the difference between the two generations here is vast, so much so that if you told me like the game generation between Phi-4 reasoning and Phi-4 reasoning plus was like a different generation of model family, I'd be like, oh yeah, I could see that. So this is really quite interesting to me. I'm going to try the Steve's PC repair one. I don't know that I'll try like the VC pitch. Maybe I will just with one of the models, but these are really like strictly told to adhere to their moral and ethical kind of rule set, if you will. So I don't know how well they would be willing to help out with something like that where we basically need an MVP for a BS product. But so just as before, we're copy and pasting the same exact prompt that we had used with the non-plus reasoning model, and we'll go ahead and see what it did. Again, I was really quite impressed with the difference in generation from the two models with the game. All right, it did it 41 tokens a second, 9,500 tokens, but it didn't paste it all in one single copy pastable thing. So it's interesting because it's telling us some of its instructions are by default do not use Markdown unless requested. So I suppose if you're going to use this, you should request Markdown if you want to not have issues. Whoops. I was about to try to open that HTML file in Python. All right, let's check this. Significantly better. The reason I've frozen up is because I swear this looks like identical. Hold on. This isn't like self-promotion I'm doing here. I genuinely feel like I just saw that exact same result the other day. Yeah, so that's why. So this result looks eerily similar to what Qwen3 235B A22B did when I tested that last night. So here's the result Qwen had. Now, unfortunately, I don't have this result saved anymore on my machine because I had to clear some space. But so, and then this, it is really just quite simple, quite similar. Hardware repair, virus removal, emergency services, upgrades, and builds. So again, there's only so many things that the models are going to come up with. I just find it so funny how eerily similar these two were. This obviously is significantly better than what the non-plus model of the Phi-4 reasoning that we tested did. Just the footer's better. It has hover effects over some of the things here. It has some decent fonts. It did quite a good job here. Let's go ahead and compare this with the one. I mean, again, if you told me these results were from models of different generations, I'd be like, yeah, oh, I totally can see that. So this is what the 514 reasoning model did. Now I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I felt bad before. This is crap. This is very poor. But the model with the extended reasoning, this is significantly better. I find it interesting, just the differences between the model. This scales to mobile very nicely. I mean, comparatively, this looks like, all right, I can't say that. I'll get in trouble. But that was very poor comparatively. So I'm going to do one more final thing. And what I want to do is just have the reasoning plus model. This is almost a moral ethical refusal test because the biggest negative, I think, and it may not be a negative for most, is that it spends a lot of time thinking about the guardrails that it must adhere to that are placed on it by its creator, so Microsoft. I want to see how it will handle a kind of like crappy scenario with a VC pitch. And I'm going to do some creative writing of my own here as I come up with this on the fly partially. All right, so we've basically given it like a really screwed up story about how two founders messed up and blew their pre-seed funding. They have a meeting with the VC today. They don't have anything to show them. So it's basically, I really want to see its chain of thought response to this atrocious prompt. Oh, okay, I'm not quite sure what happened here, but that's okay. That's like a... I like how it basically just totally ignored all of the screwed up things that these two individuals went and did with the pre-seed funding, and it's just directly focused upon the result and the user's request. So, all right, this is actually pretty good. Some money was misallocated on a 2004 Maserati coupe, which now sits broken down in the driveway. The context seems like a startup story. They got 25 free seed. All right. And then it's just basically like, yeah, okay. So maybe it's a story of mismanagement, but that's not relevant for the pitch. I love it. I love this model. I really love this model. I hate the non-plus reasoning one, but this one I like. All right, so it didn't generate us anything to actually show. It just basically generated us the entire pitch deck that we would use for the VC. So basically, imagine a world where managing your project feels as natural as breathing. All right, so blah, blah, blah. What do we have here? Okay, here's the product. Task Catalyst is our startup. A clean I'm not quite sure what the heck that is, so please correct me. Interface that lets you create projects. And okay, so this is essentially, unlike a behemoth like these, bloated to new users. It's lightweight, must have. We have some MVP features, which, okay, I did kind of want the MVP to be generated in some functional level like the Quen model did yesterday, but I'm not going to give it too much flack here. We have a roadmap, why they should invest, and an elevator pitch summary. That was 5,800 tokens. We're only 20% full in the context, so we're basically going to ask it to generate the static landing page. All right, let's check out Task Catalyst. It did what I asked it to. Sign up for free. I do like the gradient on sign up for free. It has catchy buzzwords for like startup lingo, like ready to streamline your workflow, things like that. Our workspace, okay, so that must be what this word means, is like that sort of style. Simple, rapid, affordable pricing. Not the best, not the worst. It did what I asked it to. Basically, we're going to close this out just by saying thanks. We got the $25 in seed funding we needed. The day is saved. I must not include Markdown. And it just said congratulations. Okay, one of the other models I did that with was like, that's not a lot of money. All right, well, that's going to wrap this up. I have to say this was quite a perplexing test, and it will probably have gone on for longer than I would have liked this video to, but truthfully, when I started using the Phi-4 Reasoning Plus model, I became extremely enjoyable. This was a lot of fun. You know how people sometimes say like a couple or something, they'll be like, I'm a better person when I'm with blank. Like this model, I feel like I'm a better tester when I'm with Phi-4 Reasoning Plus. I really enjoyed this model. I would say use case wise, I suppose if you were doing something that relied on just getting a quality proper answer in one or two prompts, Phi-4 Reasoning Plus absolutely is the right choice to go with. Truthfully, Phi-4 Reasoning, I wasn't really super impressed by. It may be that I was using it wrong, but also I'm making that comparison now basically compared to the Reasoning Plus model. For the specific types of testing that I do, the Reasoning Plus model blew the non-plus model out of the water to such a significant extent that if you had told me some of the results that Phi-4 Reasoning generated, I would, and you told me like that was Phi-3, I'd be like, oh yeah, I could see the generational leap here. So again, I can't speak to some of that. I will say that this Phi-4 Reasoning Plus model at this Q8 quant with the context max to 32,768 is awesome. I love it. I like its style, I suppose to say. There's perhaps some like subconscious reasons why I like it, but I really was impressed with this model to a high degree. I think it's very good. I like it. Probably beating a dead horse here, but I like this model. The non-reasoning, the non-plus, it was fine. It was sufficient, but this seems to really have the extra spark to it that the non-plus did not have, at the expense, obviously, of using far, far more tokens per single answer generated. Whether or not that's worth it for your specific use case really, of course, comes down to the specific use case you have. I think if you were using like a coding assistant or something that just needed to debug, you'd probably be fine with the non-plus model because you could continually prompt it for kind of directing it the right way to help you debug the code. But if you need something in one shot, the Reasoning Plus would definitely be the one to go with. I do wish that I had some very deep like scientific or PhD knowledge in order to be able to ask it something from within that domain to kind of analyze its chain of thought and things like that. But I suppose we are... this is what we have to test with, at least for me. So yeah, very good. I'm I love this model. Phi-4 Reasoning Plus, I love it. I will test the Phi-4 Mini Reasoning. I did not see a Phi-4 Mini Reasoning Plus, which I want. I want that so bad. So this supports 128K context length. Ooh, that's actually very interesting, and I had not realized that before. Sorry, I'm on like a tangent here. I really should probably go to sleep. But this is very interesting. So I am looking forward to testing this. I will make a dedicated video testing the mini reasoning model here now as well. With that, that's going to wrap it up. I hope that this was enjoyable and perhaps somewhat educational. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.